From the News Channel 5 Network, this is SportsLine.
Hello, SportsLine on your television. Steve Layman here with you. Glad you are here with us tonight on News Channel 5. Plus, the brackets are out. We got a lot of basketball we can talk about. Tennessee, of course, the SEC champion, winners of the tournament down in Tampa over the weekend for the first time since 1979. Just a terrific performance. Kennedy Chandler, the tournament MVP. Josiah Jordan-James, Santiago Vescovi, both part of the all-tournament team as well. Just a really good performance by Tennessee. It's hard to imagine anybody playing better basketball right now than the way Tennessee is playing. I mean, Gonzaga's been essentially number one for a long time this year. Arizona has played really, really good basketball. Of course, the Vols, maybe their best win of the entire season was over Arizona back in December. But you move on beyond those two teams. Tennessee's been just about as impressive as anybody down the stretch here. 12 of the last 13 games going into the win column. 14 of 15 of their final SEC games going into the win column. Tied for second in the regular season, just a game back of Auburn. And then, of course, the conference tournament championship. A lot of Vol fans out there disappointed about the seed, Tennessee being a 3 in the South region of this tournament. They were thinking, based off of what I just said, given the number of wins, given the success late in the season, given how well Tennessee is playing, everybody was thinking 2 seed. Some people may have even been as optimistic enough as to think Tennessee might have been able to find its way to the 1 line. I don't think that was realistic given the resumes of the top 4 teams. Should Tennessee have been a 2 seed? Yes, absolutely. They should have been a 2 seed. That's what the metrics tell you. And I think the metrics for Tennessee stack up well, not just with Duke, who was the final number 2 seed, or even Villanova, but I think Tennessee's metrics actually stack up really well against Auburn and Kentucky. They split with Auburn, won 2 of 3 against Kentucky after winning on Saturday in the semifinals, and a lot of the other numbers look good in favor of Tennessee as well. Auburn was the SEC regular season champion. Certainly that counts for something as you think of the entire body of work. Kentucky has some monster wins out there. But so does Tennessee. Tennessee deserved to be a number 2 seed. Vol fans have a right to be disappointed about that. The one thing I would caution, though, is going overboard with it. Because I have seen some people really frustrated about this bracket, specifically about Tennessee. And that's fine. You can be upset when it comes out initially. When the bracket comes out initially to think our resume stacks up. We should be number 2. I think that's right. But here's the deal. When it comes to the NCAA tournament, the only thing that matters is the path in front of you. Where do you have to go logistically? And who do you play? That's it. Those are the only things that matter. And then you've got to take care of business against whatever those 2 things spell out for you. And I just want to say this. For all the Vol fans up in arms about Tennessee not getting a 2 seed, look at the pass and tell me if where Tennessee landed is all that much worse than where they could have been. A lot of people thought it was Duke that they would overtake, right? Duke was the final number 2 seed. Well, if Tennessee gets that seed, they become the 2 in the West region, which means your regional final appearances, the toughest games that you're going to have to face, are going to take place in San Francisco, more than half a continent away. You have to get out there. You got to travel there on short notice. And it would be very likely that a Tennessee team that if there is any Achilles heel for this team as well as they're playing right now, it is the fact, and you look back to the last couple of losses, Arkansas, Texas. This is a team that at times has really struggled to score and has gone on droughts. Now the defense has picked it up. I think they've played better offense down the stretch. The guards are taking care of the basketball, and that is a huge thing for this team, and they're knocking down outside shots. When that happens, they become really tough to beat. But you look back at those losses, Arkansas and Texas. Tennessee couldn't score. Who would the Sweet 16 matchup be if Tennessee got the number 2 seed in the West? It would be the number 1 rated defense in America in Texas Tech. I'm not sure that's a great matchup. And if you would be fortunate enough to get past that, you're likely facing the number 1 overall seed in the tournament in Gonzaga. Is that the seed? Is that the spot you really wanted to be in? I mean, I know it's nice to see the 2 instead of the 3 next to your name. But when you look at the path, do you really want Duke's path? Do you want to fly to San Francisco? Do you want to take on Texas Tech? Do you want to take on Gonzaga? I mean, that's the real question there. Are you making the argument they could have been in front of Kentucky or Auburn? Yeah, you could maybe make that argument. But again, what's your path? What's the path in front of you for some of those? Even Villanova. Villanova was the next closest 2 seed that Tennessee could have potentially jumped. Well, because of the bracketing procedures, they would have ended up in the same region just like they are now. So, okay, Tennessee could have maybe been the 2 seed. Villanova would have been the 3 seed. But if you expect them both to take care of business as if they are, well, then the only difference is that Tennessee's wearing white and Villanova's wearing navy in the Sweet 16. That is the only difference. They would still meet each other in the exact same spot, in the exact same building. And oh, by the way, if you look at Villanova's path, I think the second-round opponent for Villanova, an Ohio State team that hopefully will be back to full strength, hopefully for their sake, has a star in E.J. Liddell, which is a tough guy to handle inside, and a superstar freshman in Malachi Branham who can really fill it up when he's on. I think Ohio State's scary if it can get right this week. And the other team there, Loyola Chicago, was in the Sweet 16 last year. Lucas Williamson, Bud Norris, those guys are back. Villanova's going to be favored against either, but I think whoever comes out of that matchup is going to go into that game on Sunday in Pittsburgh feeling pretty confident, feeling like they've got a shot to knock off Villanova. Colorado State's a nice team. Michigan is a really talented team. Those are the potential matchups in round 2 for Tennessee. But when I look at it, Colorado State doesn't have the weapons to match up with Tennessee. I frankly don't think Colorado State has the weapons to match up with Michigan. The question about Michigan, though, is can they pull their act together? Juwan Howard was suspended for the final 5 games of the regular season because of punching a guy in a handshake line a few weeks ago. Where is he at? Where is this team at given the turmoil they've had? Because for all the talent, Michigan went just 17-14 this year. So it's a team that's never really figured it out, and another team in Colorado State that I just don't think has the weapons and the potential to beat a team as balanced and as good and as solid defensively as Tennessee. So when you look at the path and not the number, I think Tennessee's in pretty good shape, at least to get to the Sweet 16. And at that point, everybody's good. You get to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament, you're either really good or you are playing really well. The teams that upset folks and get to the Sweet 16, when you get that 10 seed or 12 seed, somebody like that, to make it to the Sweet 16, you may not have viewed them as really elite all season long, but they've got to be playing at that type of a level to get there. So when you get to the second weekend, you're expecting it to be a really, really good game. And that's what's in front of Tennessee, for sure. I think Tennessee's path to go to Indianapolis this weekend, a drivable trip where they should have a whole bunch of fans up there, I think that's a really good place to start. I don't think Longwood can touch Tennessee. I don't think Colorado State or Michigan stacks up or will be ready enough to play against this Tennessee team. So I think Tennessee gets to the Sweet 16 pretty handily this weekend and continues the role they've been on. And oh, by the way, having a favorable matchup in the first weekend might be kind of important for this Tennessee team because that was an emotional, tough run that they had at the SEC tournament. 3 games in 3 days, knock off a rival in Kentucky, knock off a hot team in Texas A&M, more on Texas A&M in a moment, and win the school's first conference tournament title in 43 years. Not just a physical pounding to play 3 games in 3 days, but it takes a mental toll on you as well to go through that. And sometimes we've seen this in the past. Teams that have a great deal of success to win an emotional conference tournament title don't always have much left in the tank the next week in the NCAA tournament. So to have favorable matchups in week 1, I think is huge and should allow Tennessee to get through and then regroup and kind of get all the juices back flowing for when the biggest, toughest challenges present themselves in this bracket. Tennessee's path, to me, is there. They're going to have to play well in the second weekend, but pretty much everybody does. And they're not going to be worried about the teams they're facing. They already played Villanova. They already played and beat Arizona. They're going to be confident to go into those games. It's not going to be easy. Those are good teams. But Tennessee is a good team as well. And so it's going to be confident if it can get to the second weekend and do that. And I think it will be in the second weekend given the draw. And that's the only thing that really matters here, is having a path that's manageable in front of you. There are a lot of other teams in here that are looking at matchups and saying, woo boy, I didn't want to see that team in round 1. Or watch out in round 2. A lot of people are saying that as they look at the bracket right now. I don't think Tennessee's saying that. I think Tennessee's saying we should be in the Sweet 16, and that's when the tournament really, really begins. Not that you look by anybody. Tennessee certainly knows they cannot do that after being upset in the 12-5 game last year by Oregon State. But there should be a lot of confidence with this team that if it just does what it has been doing and plays good basketball, things are going to take care of itself. And Tennessee is going to move on in this South region. Frankly, I think part of the reason so many people are talking about the Tennessee seed, and yes, it was wrong. Tennessee should have been a 2. I will keep pounding the table to slam that home. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. Tennessee should have been a 2. But part of the reason people are talking so much about it is because I think this is one of the most fair NCAA tournament brackets I have ever seen the selection committee come out with. The Tennessee gripe is like the only gripe of the bracket. They hit things on the head. There are almost no seeds I disagree with in the field other than Tennessee. Maybe Alabama at a 6 in a positive way for the SEC. Not a lot of differential where you would say, oh man, that's terrible. A lot of times brackets come out and you look at teams like last year, for instance. Last year, Loyola Chicago, we mentioned how they got to the Sweet 16 a year ago. That was a team that was ranked in the top 10 of every metric all year long a year ago. And the NCAA selection committee gave the Ramblers an 8 seed. They were in the top 10 in every metric all year long. And look, I get it. Loyal's in the Missouri Valley. You're not going to give them a 1 or a 2 or a 3 seed. But if you looked at the metrics, they were a 3 seed last year. If you thought kind of reasonably of how a mid-major team that had the profile of Loyola looks and where they should be, Loyola should have been a 6. They should have been a 6, maybe a 5, maybe a 7. Instead, the selection committee put them on the 8-9 game where a 1 seed, in this case Illinois, had to play them in the second round. Oh, by the way, an in-state kind of little brother. That was bad bracketing. It was bad seeding. It was bad bracketing. And it hurts everybody involved there. It hurts Loyola, which had an incredible season and has to match up with the 1 seed in the second round. And it really hurts the 1 seed, who has to play a team way better than its seed line way sooner than it should have been. And ultimately, Loyola wins. One of the great upsets of the tournament. But it felt unfair to everybody involved because the path had nothing to do with what it should have for either one of those teams. You can't really say that about Tennessee. You can't really say that about anybody else in this bracket. The one major complaint, and this is the one that I'll pound home for a couple of days, Texas A&M should have been in the tournament. 23 wins, finished the season strong. 3 wins, 3 days, get to the championship game at the SEC tournament before losing to Tennessee. Buzz Williams had that team playing like an NCAA tournament team. And the metrics looked like an NCAA tournament team. When I did my bracket, before the committee did, when I was trying to project who was going to be in, Texas A&M, if I'm being honest, I had them in the first 4 after losing on Sunday, but they weren't the last 2 teams in. I had them 3rd to last in. And the committee had them 4th out. So that's a huge difference. And I think a lot more of the people out there who watch basketball and study it and try to predict these things are on my side with A&M, believing they were in the field, even regardless of the result on Sunday, than had them out like the committee did. I thought it was a very good bracket. I thought Texas A&M was a huge miss. All right, your thoughts on the bracket, 737-7767. Your thoughts on Tennessee's seed, its path, your belief. Give me your Final Four, whatever. When we come back, we're going to get into the bracket. I'm going to actually go through and fill mine out. Haven't done that yet, at least with any level of thought. So I'm going to do it right here with you. On the program, when we come back, we'll take your phone calls as well. 737-7767. This is SportsLine on News Channel 5+.